Welcome to this event organized by the Global Cities Hub and the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center. Today it's the 2nd of June. It's Heat Action Day, a global day of action and awareness on extreme heat. I am Simone Sessler. I am the Event and Communications Coordinator at the Global Cities Hub. And today we mark Heat Action Day. We're going to highlight best practices, scalable initiatives, and relevant tools for local and regional governments on how to fight extreme heat. And we're going to show that local and regional governments can really make a difference on beating the heat. Some housekeeping matters just to start. The event is recorded and will be made available after the event is ended on our webpage. We're also going to post a summary of the event, so if you miss some parts, please do consult our website afterwards. The event is going to be held in English only, but you can have translated captions in a wide variety of languages using the Zoom tool at the bottom of your screen. And then use the Q&A to ask questions to our panelists. They're going to be very happy, and we're going to have time to answer all of your questions. In 2026, Heat Action Day's theme is Indoor Heat. Indoor heat, of course, it's the heat that affects us all in our private homes, but it's also broader than that. It's public facilities, schools, health facilities, prisons, and care homes. So let's start with some opening remarks by Antu Duong, co-director of the Global Cities Hub, and then by Ainur Kadiasanoglu from the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center. So Antu, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Simone, for that introduction. And maybe I'll just start with presenting the Global Cities Hub for those who are unfamiliar with our organization. We work to strengthen connection between cities, regions, and the international community at large. And we pursue two objectives: helping cities to better engage with the United Nations and other international organizations, and ensuring that the international community better integrates the urban into global policy making, because we all know it, our future and even actually our present is urban. So it's the third consecutive year that we have the pleasure to organize this event dedicated to extreme heat in cities in collaboration with the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center. And let me here at the outset thank Ainur and Megan for their fantastic collaboration. This event takes place, as you said, Simone, in the framework of the Heat Action Day, a global moment for raising awareness and sharing solutions around extreme heat. We just recently have seen the publication of the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, State of the Global Climate Report, which recently confirmed that the years 2015 to 2025 are the hottest 11 years on record, with 2025 being the second or the third hottest year on record. We all know it. Heat particularly affects cities and their residents, mainly because of the urban heat island effect. So today, the objective, as you said, Simone, will be to highlight, best practices, good measures, relevant tools, because we're convinced that local and regional governments have to make a difference at their local level to address this global challenge. In particular, we hope to really emphasize the governance aspect of heat within a municipality. So, of course, measures are important, but how you manage this challenge as a municipality within your institutional setup is also very important. So we're very pleased again to host this event, and we hope that this will help cities and regions worldwide to better prioritize and better address extreme heat. Thank you.
Thank you, Antu. Ainur, you are a senior urban specialist at the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center. Please, you have the floor for your opening remarks.
Oh, thank you so much, Simone, and thank you so much, Antu, for organizing this event, for in general being such a great partner in many other events, but especially for the Heat Action Day. We really appreciate that. So, like you said, this is the 5th edition of Heat Action Day, which is a global um, event and getting more and more global by the day. So we would started this campaign to raise awareness about extreme heat, but also inspire action. It is celebrated on the 2nd of June every year, and it's been steadily growing over the years with hundreds of participants, not just local Red Cross, Red Crescent branches, but cities, city networks, and many other organizations are part of it. This year we have UN Environment Program, I see also here, which is highly welcome, and they will be connecting their very interesting cool coalition program with over 100 members with the Heat Action Day. And will be also celebrated, I believe, on the Earth Day, June 5th. So stay tuned with that too. Just give you a quick snapshot of what is Heat Action Day, because I don't want to go into the risks and extreme heat, since we have an excellent panelist. So I would love to hear from them as well. We usually choose a theme of every year, but it's not very restrictive. So this year, the theme is indoor heat, and we also try to publish a flagship report aligning with that theme. This year, the report will come from WMO, Global Heat Health Information Network. I believe it will be published mid-June. So please be looking for that. It will focus on a very extensive research we supported about indoor heat. I just want to say that we highly appreciate working with cities and cities participating in Heat Action Day, because over the years, what we saw that the best results come when the local organizations like Red Cross, the community voices, are partnering with cities. Those are the best events that we really love. And our main efforts are making these connections. As the Climate Center, that's our main top priority, because we see that in cities, the climate challenges cannot be met by community action alone, which is also very important, but it's not enough. With that, I would like to also maybe insert a brief information about Climate Center. Climate Center is one of the close to 20 reference centers of International Red Cross, Red Crescent movement. It's hosted by Netherlands Red Cross, but we are a truly global team spread all over the world. With that, I want to finish because I really would like to hear our panelists. And thank you so much. We will be publishing all the activities of Heat Action Day on our website, which I will put in the chat. Please check that out. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Ainur, and of course at the Global Cities Hub we are happy to cooperate with the Climate Center on Heat Action Day and beyond, and we of course will amplify the message on this indoor heat report that's going to be published once it's published. And as you mentioned, let's go to our excellent panelists. We have Albert Ferreira, Chief Heat Officer from the city of Cape Town. We have Elsa Lefebvre of UNEP, and we have Nousheen Anwar, who works for the International Institute for Environment and Development and is a member of the working group, technical working group on indoor heat. So thank you all panelists for joining us. It's great to have you. And let's get stuck in with Albert. You were appointed Chief Heat Officer in 2025, but that's not the only hat you wear. You are also manager for resilience and climate change at the city of Cape Town. And this idea that heat is only another hat that you're wearing, it does not have a separate governance structure. It is a cross-sectoral cross-sectoral issue that needs mainstreaming across existing city departments that are already established. So the first question that we'd like to look at is in terms of governance, how does heat governance look in Cape Town, and where would having a heat department in the city make sense? And secondly, we discussed preparing for this event the heat projects that the city has implemented deliver a wide range of benefits that are not limited to mitigating and adapting to extreme heat, but also mitigate and adapt against climate change, foster partnerships with the private sector, secure funding, both national and international, address informality in labor. Can you discuss a little bit how can fighting extreme heat deliver on a wide range of social, economic, and environmental benefits? Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity. So yeah, just first off to say, locally in Cape Town, we've experienced record temperatures throughout the past few years, including a massive heat wave that we experienced in March. But I also want to situate us in other risks as well. So, for example, 2 weeks ago we had major flooding events. We have early signs of drought, and so we are navigating in an era of polycrisis, and we need to think about addressing specific hazard risks, but also broader in terms of impacting on residents' well-being. So just to start off. So in Cape Town, our approach to heat governance is around coordination, cross-cutting work areas, and then increasingly becoming partnership driven, acknowledging that just even if we collaborate internally, that's not enough given the challenges that we face. So in terms of the chief heat officer role, and then my other sort of main day job role of resilience and climate change manager, we look at holistically what's the kind of risks that we face over the past 20 years, and then we have this agenda around mainstreaming resilience and climate change within the organization and beyond. So as it relates to particularly heat, we have our heat action plan, which was approved in 2023, and that becomes our overall framework for implementation. And we've deliberately decentralized our implementation across the organization, across various line departments. So, for example, disaster risk management is led by, our disaster risk management team and other line departments leads our emergency preparedness and response, which includes working with NGOs and partner organizations as well as the public. Then our urban planning and infrastructure teams integrate long-term cooling and risk reduction into our capital projects. Then our health and community services departments focuses on vulnerable populations during crisis, but also thinking about how do we improve people's overall well-being and health moving forward. Then, as a little bit related to indoor heat, which is often a neglected factor, our occupational health and safety as well as facilities management teams focuses on providing guidance and monitoring of staff safety as well as conditions of our facilities so that those spaces become cooler and just more dignified spaces for both our staff and residents. So the idea is that we want to integrate the systematic urban risk into our core city functions, and it's important to think beyond the city as well. So, for example, national government sets labor laws, health laws, and safety regulations. Provincial and national partners work on healthcare, education, and disaster response. And then we think about how do we work with the private sector, academia, and civil society around reducing risks. We, of course, have our international partners. Today's conversation with this Global Cities Hub, but also the UNDP, ICLEI, C40, etc., which allows us to learn from other cities, but also take our learnings to a global platform. So essentially, we combine a strong coordination and monitoring function from my office with action that is then done by departments as well as partners. So it's kind of moves beyond a single structure. So in terms of your question, whether we should have a heat department, in our case, having dedicated capacity around coordination, monitoring, and building partnerships internally and externally has really been successful for us. And particularly moving into the next high heat season, we look to expand on the partnership component. Then in terms of the second question around how do we integrate extreme heat within our capital projects? So when we are building infrastructure, how do we deliver on both heat resilience, but also broader issues? So within the city of Cape Town, we have South Africa's largest capital investment program over the next 10 years, so 120 billion rands. And part of that system that has been built is a portfolio approach to projects. They go through various screening processes, and part of the screening processes is that they have to identify firstly what are the kind of hazards or risks that the infrastructure face, and how can they both reduce the risk for the organization as well as residents. So through scoring processes like cost benefit analysis, options analysis, etc., and then making sure through verification that these projects both deliver on our specific needs, so specific sector needs. So if it's a stormwater project, for example, yes, it still needs to take water from point A to point B, but we believe that if you think about, for example, integrating nature into our infrastructure, we can deliver on economic, socioeconomic, and environmental benefits as well. And increasingly, our international partners, funding partners, are looking for how we respond to climate change. And again, this meets our need where we want to move beyond moving from disaster to disaster by actually reducing our risk in the first place. So ultimately, success for us in terms of heat governance, heat implementation would mean an improved quality of life for residents. So this would look like taking heat adaptation from a policy statement to something that people experience in their daily lives. So it could be comfort, safety, dignity, and opportunity as we deal with the changing climate moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Very insightful perspective from a local government, and it recalls what we heard in 2025 in the Heat Action Day event that we held with Athens and the Chief Heat Officer of Athens, that said that there is a bit of difficulty in coordinating across different established departments. But it seems like Cape Town has found a way to actually work efficiently, effectively, and coordinate, monitor across different established departments in a way that's replicable and where other local and regional governments can learn kind of how to, right? Let's go now to our next panelist, Elsa. You are program manager at the Subnational Climate Action Unit of UNEP, where you focus on Beat the Heat projects. UNEP has been very active on Beat the Heat and tried to bring together a lot of different stakeholders, including local and regional governments, but also national governments, businesses, financial institutions, to drive action, implementation on sustainable cooling and extreme heat. So our questions are, how can Beat the Heat help local and regional governments put in practice sustainable cooling policies and address extreme heat? And what assessment and implementation tools are relevant to local and regional governments? You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Simone and colleagues, for the invitation, and very nice to be online today for this webinar. So I think I'm entering to this panel with a very different perspective from Albert, and I think like more the global angle for it. So I hope it's complementary. What I wanted to say is to start maybe is where the heat comes from and how at UNEP the thinking around this work has evolved. So the entry point for us several years ago was to work on sustainable cooling with the private sector, with national governments, but through this partnership and all the work, and including like last year, the leadership of the COP30 presidency, we felt that there was a need to go from these global and national goals that were like formalized into the Global Cooling Pledge a couple years ago, to also focus a lot on the implementation at the local level and how to take these global goals into local implementation and enter to it through the angle of both adaptation to extreme heat and mitigation, which is sometimes maybe less considered as well in this in the work of heat adaptation, and really like trying to move this. And Albert, I think you mentioned it, like from the disaster risk management perspective to also the long-term changes into the structure of the city and the way it is built to adapt, but also to find a way to reduce the expected increase in emission related to the cooling sector. Like if we don't change this, it's expected that this could triple, the emissions could triple by 2050. So I think this was the entry point. And so Beat the Heat is the way that we built together with the COP30 presidency and a lot of partners and cities around like three work areas. One around heat mapping and heat planning, which can take the form of like standalone or being embedded into climate plans. The second is around nature-based solution and passive design of buildings. So how to change the urban form of the city, the buildings, etc. And the third one relates to sustainable cooling equipment and how to use levers like the public procurement levers to drive and transform the market around cooling equipment. And so it links to efficient air conditioning, but also prioritizing other solutions like fans or equipment that would consume less energy. So I think connected to the theme of today's Heat Action Day, this is broadly around reducing heat and urban island effect in cities, but of course this has a direct link to indoor heat reduction as well. And as mentioned by Ainur earlier, we have like today and in this week linked to Heat Action Day and also the World Environment Day, which is at the end of the week, a mobilization of cities around extreme heat. And it's like 50 cities across the world, or a bit more than 50 now, actually, that will be part of this activation for the World Environment Day to really think about how you prepare for extreme temperature. Linked to this was something that the city of Paris, which is involved in Beat the Heat, proposed. And they did an exercise like this a couple years ago on what if it was 50 degrees in the city, how do we prepare, how do we mobilize, and what can we change? And so this week, we'll have like these 50 cities that are part of the activation sharing what they are doing on extreme heat, and a small cohort of them that will get into a community of practice and work next year in developing like a similar type of exercise. So it's part of Beat the Heat, and it's one of the activities that we have under this. Then I think what I wanted to say is that Beat the Heat is really seen, and you asked me about the tools and how to turn like the ambition into policies. So the way it functions is that we now have about 230 cities that have joined Beat the Heat. All of them have been invited to fill in a survey on their needs and what they prioritize against the three commitments that I outlined. And the same has been asked from our partners. So the first phase is matchmaking also between like the capacity that partners have to support some of the priorities identified by cities. And for example, it led to the World Resource Institute offering their newly developed data platform called the School Cities Lab to about a dozen of cities that are in Beat the Heat so that they have access to heat maps, or Google providing additional data on roof albedo to more cities that are engaged in Beat the Heat, or training by Arab. So I think it's really about like facilitating the interaction between the offer and the demand, as well as working with a number of countries that are engaged in Beat the Heat with several cities around like national programs that will help the cities with the planning and implementation. I just wanted to mention very briefly as well that as part of the work last year, we released an urban heat management handbook together with the World Bank, UNEP, and UN Habitat, which really offers a structured and step-by-step approach to move from like the diagnosis part to actions, and really explains the different steps and is really aligned with these different areas of work that I outlined. And I'm happy to go back in maybe more detail, but to stop here for the moment, Simone, in terms of some of the specific like tools that some of the partners, for example, are offering. But back to you, Simone.
Thank you, Elsa. And of course, this demonstrates that local and regional governments can have help from the international level on developing heat action plans, on beating the heat at the local level. So please, if you are a local government representative or a mayor, do not hesitate to ask a question using the Q&A to Elsa on what specific tools that could be there and that could help you push forward this agenda in your local area. Thank you, Elsa. We now move on to Nosheen. Nosheen, you are Urban Climate Resilience Lead at the International Institute for Environment and Development, and a member of the WMO/WHO Technical Group on Indoor Heat Risks to Health. You already joined us for a Heat Action Day event in 2024, and I went and looked back, and you highlighted then the problem of indoor heat. And the fact that many people think about indoor heat as a threat only in private homes, but you highlighted that there are many other places where risks are significant: care homes, schools, health facilities. You highlighted the problem of female domestic workers that work indoor and therefore have a job risk from indoor heat. In 2025, the WMO and WHO published the Climate Change and Workplace Heat Stress Report that goes into depth on the risks of heat for workers, both indoor and outdoor, and how to adapt and mitigate these risks. What is in the report? Can you talk about the report a little bit, and what recommendations are set out for local and regional governments in the report? What tools or technical support can LRGs get from there? No,
Thank you very much, Simone. First of all, thank you for inviting me. And it really is a pleasure to join colleagues from the Global Cities Hub, the Red Crescent Climate Center, the Cool Coalition, and the City of Cape Town on Heat Action Day. So I will draw out three key messages that summarize the importance of what the report has put together. First of all, of course, the report underlines that heat is no longer a future climate risk. It is a present day health, labor, and development challenge. The WHO-WMO report shows that climate change is increasing both average temperatures and the frequency and intensity of heat waves. More than 2.4 billion workers are already exposed to excessive heat globally. The consequences are not only heat exhaustion and heat stroke. We're also seeing impacts on cardiovascular health, kidney function, mental well-being, workplace injuries, and productivity. Workplace heat stress is therefore both a public health challenge and an economic challenge. Second, while heat discussions have traditionally focused on outdoor exposure, the report underlines that indoor heat is becoming an equally important concern. People spend a good or significant amount of time indoors, in homes, in schools, in health facilities, workplaces, care homes, and prisons. During heat waves, indoor temperatures can remain dangerously high, especially at night. When buildings trap heat and fail to cool, people lose the opportunity to recover physiologically from daytime heat exposure. This is particularly concerning for vulnerable groups, including older adults, children, people with chronic illnesses, low-income households, and workers in poorly ventilated indoor environments, for instance, those in informal settlements. So indoor overheating, as the report shows us, is not just a building issue. It is a health equity issue. And I would add to this that it is also a livelihoods issue. One aspect that is often overlooked is the everyday economic burden of indoor heat, particularly in informal settlements and low-income urban neighborhoods. Many people work in spaces that are simultaneously home, workplace, and care environment. Home-based workers, small-scale producers, food processors, garment workers, and other informal workers often spend long hours in poorly ventilated structures that become dangerously hot during heat waves. For many women, this is compounded by unpaid care responsibilities. They are caring for children, older relatives, and sick family members, while also trying to maintain income-generating activities in overheated indoor environments. Heat, therefore, creates a double burden. It reduces productivity and earning opportunities while simultaneously increasing care demands. So these everyday economic losses are rarely visible in official statistics, but they are deeply felt by households and communities. This is one reason why indoor overheating should be understood, as the report underlines, not only as a public health issue, but also as a question of social equity, gender equality, and urban resilience. Third, local and regional governments are uniquely positioned to act. Many of the solutions already exist. Cities can reduce urban heat islands through urban greening, shade infrastructure, and nature-based solutions. They can update building standards and housing policies to promote passive cooling, ventilation, and heat-resilient construction materials. They can ensure access to cooling centers and cool public spaces during extreme heat events. They can integrate heat risk into urban planning, public health systems, emergency preparedness, and social protection programs. And they can ensure that heat action plans explicitly address indoor environments rather than focusing exclusively on outdoor temperatures. The WHO-WMO reports highlights the importance of occupational heat action programs, early warning systems, monitoring, training, and coordinated action across sectors. These principles apply equally in indoor overheating risks. What support is available? As the report shows, a growing ecosystem of international tools already exists. This begins with the WHO-WMO report that provides evidence and guidance on heat health risks and prevention. The UNDRR and MCR 2030 have developed the Extreme Heat Risk Governance Framework and Toolkit to support local governments in assessing and strengthening heat governance systems. The UNEP Coal Coalition supports implementation through technical assistance and practical cooling solutions. WMO supports climate services and heat health early warning systems. The WHO provides public health guidance, risk assessment approaches, and health sector support. So the key point is that cities do not have to start from scratch. There is already a strong international knowledge base that can help local governments move from awareness to implementation. So as we mark Heat Action Day in 2026, I believe the next phase of action must focus on making our indoor environments safer, healthier, and more resilient to extreme heat. Because ultimately, climate resilience is not only about surviving heat waves, it is about ensuring that people can live, work, learn, and recover safely in the places where they spend most of their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Nosheen. I've already seen that some questions have started arriving, and that Albert has already answered one in writing. Please do share your questions using the Q&A, and we'll answer them. We will also put a link to all the tools that have been mentioned today, and all the links that are also being shared in the chat in the summary of the event that's going to be published in our social media in the coming days. Albert, you had a question from the audience on integrating heat resilience into governance infrastructure partnerships to protect vulnerable communities. If you could answer that also yeah. But then connecting to that and connecting to the WMO WHO report, how is workplace heat exposure considered in heat mitigation and adaptation strategies in Cape Town, both for indoor and outdoor workers and formal and informal workers?
Right. Thank you very much. Yeah, and just to concur, I think indoor heat's often neglected, and I think when we are moving into reviewing our heat action plan, we will have a specific focus. But maybe just touching on both of those questions, I think our climate response in general, but for heat as well, is really guided around where people as well as places are most vulnerable to a particular hazard. So we try to prioritize that. And within the South African context, and I think a lot of developing world context, a lot of that risk is shaped around informality. So both for example, the physical structures in which people live, so they have limited indoor options for cooling. And as well as the informal sector workers. Maybe just to paint a little bit of a picture around how that functions in South Africa. So national regulations around labor laws, etc., is at a national level, but South African cities, as well as sort of cities in general, have really important levers that we can pull to make both for indoor and outdoor workers, of course, to think about how we can influence that. So yes, ambient temperature within a neighborhood matters for indoor temperature, of course, as well, but physical structure matters as well, and that's just where partnership is important. And I'll post the link now as well. For example, our partners through the University of Cape Town is working on a project for it's called Heat Adaptation Benefits for Vulnerable Groups in Africa, HAPVIA, where informal structure roofs are painted, and it's painted in a light reflecting and heat reflecting paint, and it's really decreased internal temperatures by a lot, and that's sort of practically showing how affordable interventions can work in that way as well. But then it's also important to consider sort of people's like the city as an employer. So we have 30,000 staff members, and we have been engaging with large corporates as well around how we can show practical progress, and we've been developing guidelines for workers within Cape Town, and people can access that as well. And then thinking about, for example, informal traders, for example, we have a lot of local regulations which we can, for example, through infrastructure investment, reduce heat risk for vulnerable workers in that space. And again, these are workers that both sometimes work internally within market spaces, but also externally. So thinking about how we can protect those most vulnerable workers is important. And I think a lot of this is also based on having quality health data, both for, again, people that might be in the informal sector, and settlements for that matter might have pre-existing conditions. So again, thinking about how we tap into health data as well as health responses, and then physical infrastructure responses to complement that. So we already know, are we seeing an improvement in local health, etc. So yeah, more work to be done in that space, but I think local governments can be empowered to assist within the larger sort of environment of indoor heat as well as outdoor heat, particularly as it relates to workers.
Thank you, Albert. And remaining on the theme of informality, we have a question that I would give to Ainur. How do you integrate building standards to address heat risk effectively if the biggest risk is an already built informal settlements where the rules are rarely followed? You have the floor.
Yeah, that's that's a great question. I'm sure other panelists have ideas too, but I just want to say that this is a challenge, yes, because of the massive scale of already built environment, the building stocks, which is not built for this climate at all. And also, we are losing the traditional knowledge, vernacular architecture of these places who have been, traditionally warm. We are losing that. And even when you look at the countries who are always hot, when you look at their cities, you will be surprised that many of the new buildings are not built for considering that climate at all. I personally have an experience like living in a all skyscraper, all glass in Manila and completely burning all day. So it is not. Recognizing that, and also I would like to acknowledge that informal settlements are definitely a big problem. And considering the projected population increase in these settlements, it will stay that way. But probably trying to solve the heat issues in informal settlements, you need to think about a little bit outside of the building codes, standard formal building codes, but look at very localized solution. And we just organized global architectural competition among the students of architecture to find exactly that, like to suggest solutions. And they came up with really interesting solutions for informal settlements mainly. And I would like to put it in the chat. But I don't know if chat goes to everyone or not. Simone, maybe you can help me with that. But this is called Heat Adaptive Architecture Competition. Please have a look. Some very cool solutions came from countries like Bangladesh, Kenya, focusing on cooling the existing structure, existing informal settlements, the heat in informal settlements. That would be something to look at. That is to emphasize that if you want to solve these problems in that kind of environments, you have to engage with communities, you have to talk to people, understand the local materials, understand the vernacular architecture practices, and come up with localized solution. There is no one solution fits all. Uh, that's how, as Red Cross, Red Crescent, we are trying to do as well. Thanks, Ella, for putting it on the chat, but I don't know if it goes to everyone or not. Yeah,
If
that's
I
what
can
I want
just
to
quickly, if I can quickly jump in on that, just to
Yeah,
say,
sure.
listening to communities. So some of our initial guidelines, especially in formal settlements, is that you need a cross flow of air in your structure. But after engaging with settlement with people living in informal settlements, due to safety concerns that they close their windows. So we have to really be in conversation and co-develop solutions with people in communities to really understand what their local constraints are. Because sometimes a heat solution is also a safety solution, is also just a general dignity, improving dignity within these spaces. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Albert. Thank you, Ainur. We have two questions for you, Albert. But first, before going to you, I'm gonna read this question and let you, Ainur, Elsa, Noshin, decide who takes it. How can cities redesign governance, infrastructure, and social protection systems to effectively address both outdoor and indoor heat stress, while translating existing global heat risk frameworks into local actionable urban intervention, specifically cities in the global south? And I think some examples of that have already been discussed, but
I'm happy to comment quickly, Noshin, if that's okay, or do you want to go
of course.
No, I just wanted to mention in a bit more detail this handbook on urban heat management in the global south, which I think would provide elements to respond to that question in very precise way. But overall, if I can just say a few words, I think it's not a one single intervention, but it's important to have a combination of approach. And I think Albert you really highlighted this very well. So it's the mix between like the governance reform, the infrastructure, which needs to become adapted and more climate responsive, and then also adapt like the social protection system to this, so that it's not just one plan or one action that will address this, but really the combination, and which would enable to expand the access to sustainable cooling, but also change how the city is built, and embed this into the longer term urban planning. And I think what's important as well is that there is like the global framework for this and the methodologies, but it's really important to have like context specific actions and inclusive that really take into account, for example, informal settlements, how the realistic like short-term action that can be taken in addition to like the longer term planning. So I think I just wanted to flag this resource because I think it really would provide like methodologies and ways where this can be done, as well as example. But over to you, Nausheen.
Thank you, Elsa. Yeah, I will just I mean, the question is an incredibly important one, and there are so many different ways of answering it because it's also a question of scale and different scales of governance and different kinds of institutional capacity building issues and how you use influence at different scales. Is influence even possible? Because sometimes it's also a political economy and a securitization question, and I don't want to get into those domains right now. In terms of the work that some of my colleagues and I are doing in Karachi, Pakistan, and I will use as an example, we're working in secondary cities. One of the most important ways in scaling up knowledge and seeking pathways of transformation is working with with national level institutions and organizations, for instance, meteorological departments. How do you get them on board? And getting them on board in such a way that community-led voices become a very important part of that transformation process, and where evidence then is leveraged on the basis of how communities are in terms of how communities in informal settlements and low-income settlements, what they're experiencing, and how that evidence then gets translated into policy action. These sorts of things are incredibly important. So these discursive spaces that connect, communities, CBOs, NGOs to broader, very influential, very powerful national level organizations. These discursive spaces can possibly become very transformative ones, and you have to kind of keep at it. And then the role of the media also becomes very important in terms of how they leverage this information for seeking that transformational, angle. So I'll just stop right there on that particular point. Thank you.
Thank you, Nausheen. And I see on the chat, in terms of follow-up, all the links and relevant documents are going to be published on our website after the event. So you're going to find a nice list of all the resources that have been shared, rich number of resources. I haven't looked at the room if there's any questions there. I'm gonna go back, think about it. I'm gonna go back to Nausheen with a question from Laurie. How do you manage this indoor risk in places where resources are scarce and heat is already nearing the upper limits of survivability?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and and there is no easy answer. So I'm actually working with partners on ground in Pakistan right now. We're co-leading on a project with a climate scientist based at King's College London and some other colleagues, and we're actually working in the cities of Jacobabad and Larkana. These are regions where ambient temperatures now are exceeding 51 Celsius, and we've got some very, very preliminary data coming in that is showing that in low-income and informal settlements, indoor temperatures are at around 35 Celsius, if not more. So one of the things that we are trying very hard to do is that how can we convince, once the data is, becomes, so we need to do the inferential analysis, there is qualitative analysis, there is quantitative analysis, there are many different facets. to how this data can be transformed and the different pathways through which it can be translated. So one of the ways in which we're hoping that these kinds of findings will get translated and become actionable is by making it available to local government organizations and departments in terms of embedding this sort of information to design budgets. So one of the typical things that happens in cities across places like Pakistan is that a lot of budgets at the local level, resources are targeted towards risk mitigation for urban flooding, but heat actually gets left out of the broader conversation. And then indoor overheating risks are never then really prioritized or even thought about. So how do you make resources available, by using data that is, again, evidence that can be leveraged to transform the broader conversations on how budgets can be, more broadly sustained to make these kinds of, this kind of data and this evidence then actionable for making indoor overheating, bringing these sorts of things to the forefront. And of course, it also then dovetails with some of the issues that my colleagues on the panel have highlighted earlier. Labor laws. How do you make labor laws more resilient? How do you bring them back into the forefront, and how do they then become embedded in broad conversations on revising budgets, making budgets more actionable and accountable on all of these kinds of issues. But I will also highlight that these are also political economy questions and political economy issues that are sometimes very, very hard to target. And then financing pathways from global to local. These are at IID. I know of colleagues who are working on this, and also at various other organizations such as the Columbia University's Climate Change Center, which is, these institutions are showing that climate financing at the local level is very weak. So the global local connectivities have to be supported so that resources are allocated in ways that are justifiable on issues of social equity and social justice, in which then indoor overheating issues can be brought to the forefront. So it is challenging, but there are pathways. Thank you.
Thank you, Nosheen. And this goes back a little bit to the example of Cape Town, where you have to deliver on extreme heat and heat action, but you can also deliver on flooding and on other kind of issues within your cities. We have a question from Antu here in the room.
Yes, thank you so much, Simone. I had a question directly to you, Albert, in Cape Town. You mentioned twice, I think, the links between your city and the national government. And I was wondering, you said, for instance, laws, I think, to protect workers are mainly designed at the national level. That makes absolutely sense. So I'm just wondering if you could dwell a little bit on the cooperation between your city level and the national level to address extreme heat in your city, but also maybe other South African cities. Thank you.
Thanks so much, and it's a good timing because today I ran into a World Bank colleague that's working now at a national level. So maybe the one project I'll mention is the work that's being done through World Bank support. I think AFD and a few others might be involved as well, but either way. So that's within what we would refer to as our economic heartland in South Africa. So that's Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Ekurhuleni, and they're developing heat action plan for those cities and that province. And what I would say where collaboration is really important is particularly around the issue of local heat health thresholds. So there's two challenges around that. Accurate and decentralized temperature information. And so in South Africa, we work with our South African Weather Service, who nationally is responsible for heat warnings and advisories. So that's the one side, and we're working together to improve data there, but also develop localized sensor networks so we can have a real-time information and data around risk, also around deployment. Because what happens is if you only have 8 weather stations in the case of Cape Town, we then have blind spots. And often there are certain areas that are far hotter. And so in 2024, through a World Bank mapping exercise that we did on a hot day, it's up to 16 degrees a differential at the same time during the day. So again, we can't have a metro-wide approach. You have to think about local responses, and then combine that with the National Department of Health around understanding, can we start to see the health impacts? So heat issues in terms of health. So for those in the know, the ICD-10 codes, which are used by our medical professionals, are often not conclusive in terms of heat. But we're working with both the national department as well as local partners, research partners, to see what's that excess morbidity and mortality data that we're trying to see. Again, all of these factors, both localized temperatures, improved health data, working with the research partners and the national government, we can try to unlock this information for all local governments within South Africa. And that's really exciting for us. And again, the more local examples we have, again, those cities have the same legislative frameworks that we have similar issues in terms of informality. So we really look forward to creating local partners, of course, around the world as well. But it's quite powerful when we have, local South African collaborations as well. So really excited by that project.
Thank you, Albert. And we are getting to the last minutes of the event. If there is any question from the room, I'll take it. Oh, good.
Question from Rome.
Yes, there is a question from Rome. Rome is also trying to adapt to heat stress, indeed. Would the example of Cape Town maybe offer some useful tips and tricks that can be adapted and implemented in Rome too?
So just a quick response on that. I would advise the teams to, of course, look at the wonderful resources that's been spoken about today. But maybe just a bit on the City Champions for Heat Action. So I have other chief heat officers that are within our network. And again, we see such wonderful practical examples. So from Athens, the education and outreach that they've done, cool spaces, etc. From Melbourne, we see integration into spatial planning and land use regulations from a heat perspective. And from our partners in Freetown, the great projects around planting more trees. So Freetown, the tree town, as it's affectionately known. So we have a lot of practical examples from elsewhere we can tap into. Thanks.
Indeed, and of course, appointing a chief heat officer is something that that local and regional governments can consider, and that doesn't need to be a whole new department as we learned today. It can be someone that coordinates and monitors and makes sure that heat resilience and extreme heat is taken into account across the internal work, and that fosters external partnerships both at the national, international, and with other stakeholders, the private sector. Thank you for joining us, panelists, Ainur, Antu, everyone in the room. We will, of course, once again, we will put all the resources on our website in the coming days. The recording of the event will be available on our YouTube and on our website, so do not worry. If there are any questions that we didn't manage to answer, do send us an email. You can find our email on our website, and we'll send it to our panelists. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Nushin. Thank you, Nur. Thank you, Elsa. Thank you, Albert. Thank you, audience. And yeah, see you next year for Heat Action. Although Heat Action doesn't take place only on Heat Action Day.